Hi everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to Aging with Andrea. So today I'm gonna talk to you all about my experience as a residence aide at an assisted living center. Buckle up. So, after my freshman year of college, I decided that I wanted to get a job in the human service field. Up until then, I had been working as a cashier at a grocery store, and I was sick of it. And I wanted to get some experience in the field that I was going into. And the thing is, when you're in the middle of your bachelor's degree, there isn't a lot of options for you to pursue. So it seemed to be that my options were either kind of childcare, daycare, kind of things like that, babysitting, or elder care. And I didn't know anything about elder care or anything like that. I had a friend who had pursued her CNA during high school, and I remember actually her telling me about cleaning them and taking them to the bathroom and stuff, and remembering how disgusting that sounded. Little did I know. But I decided to go and apply to a local assisted living center in my hometown. I had an old friend, neighbor, who worked there as a life enrichment aide, and she said that they were hiring, and I was under the impression that I would be, kind of helping them to dinner, hanging out with them, playing games, making sure they were okay, like different things like that. And instead, I was taking care of all of the pretty much everyday things: grooming, feeding, toileting, making sure that they were okay, doing a lot of things. The role was never ending. The job description, the list of things that I did, it was never ending. And so I remember going in to train, and I'd be curious to know any other, people's experiences with working at an assisted living or nursing home facility or whatever, because I didn't have my CNA. So I was able to just go in, and most of the people actually that worked there did not have their CNA. A lot of them were nursing students or things like that, but or had worked in the healthcare field for a long time. But me, I had never done anything like that, and they just kind of let me come in. And I did do the training. There was 2 days of long training, and hours and hours of training, and it was very overwhelming, actually, the way that we did it. And there was a couple of videos that we had to sit and watch, and they kind of pertain to really important things, like learning how to work with people with dementia or different types of dementia. But I remember there was a couple people in our training group that, they fell asleep, they were on their phones, because supervisors or the person that was training us, they would just turn on the movie or the video and leave. So I don't really feel, looking back on it now, I really don't agree, especially with, my education that I've had since then on the different ways to kind of train and educate people. I just don't really agree with that method personally, but if you have a differing viewpoint or a different experience, I'd be curious to hear about it, honestly. So leave that in the comments if you want. So after the training, or in the training, we sat around the table, I remember, and kind of talked about what we had done before this, and what our backgrounds were, and different things like that. And I remember, so interesting, I remember it getting to me, and I kind of introduced myself, said what I was doing in school, things like that, how old I was, whatever. And my boss, she said, have you ever cleaned up puke or poop or anything? And I said, no, I can't say I have. And she was like, and she snorted and laughed and said, we'll see how long you're here. So I'm not any expert on management and ways to manage a staff. I just don't feel like that's the way to talk to your new employees. Personally, I believe that's the way to get them to say, oh, okay, bye, because it's just not very supportive. But regardless, joke's on her because I lasted for 3 years and I was probably one of the better aides in my personal opinion. But, I'm biased. So, anyway, after that training, we were required to do 10 shifts supervised by, or like kind of shadowing someone, which I feel like is pretty good. It could probably be a little more, but also, once you get the hang of it, it's not the skills themselves that you need to get the hang of, because that's pretty easy. It's pretty standard to figure out how to wipe someone's butt, or get them shaved or showered or different things like that, get them clothed. But it's another thing to get to know people's routines, because this is a person-centered field. It's definitely a person-centered care or a job. Despite what kind of people do, it's meant to be person-centered. So we need to know their routines, how they work, how they operate individually, these residents. So that was probably the hardest thing to deal with, and just personalities, temperaments, different things like that. And then you also, with the residents that had dementia, you have that factor in, put that factor into play, and it gets a lot more complicated. So it was more on that end, just kind of getting to know the residents themselves, and it was a little overwhelming at first, but I got the hang of it. You always, if you are a residence aide or a CNA and you're just getting the hang of it, or you're thinking about this job, just know that it gets better. You'll be fine. Don't worry. So the job itself is emotionally draining. I will be honest with you. It's a lot, especially if you're doing an 8-hour shift. It's just a lot. So a lot of the times, I did all 3 shifts during my time at the assisted living that I worked at. And so I got to experience all 3 of them. And there's pros and cons to all of them, as with any job and shift. But, it's just a lot. You have to toilet them and feed them and make sure everything's tracked and well in time. Because typically there's a time limit. I know at my work, we had a tablet and we used a system to keep track of their care. And it was time stamped, and there was different times that you had to do things. And if you didn't do them on time, you would get in trouble. I'm sure the care center or facility would get in trouble because they weren't doing care properly. There's just a lot of consequences. And so often something that I struggled with was giving them quality care in the amount of time that I was given. Because it's a little hard when when a resident's having a rough day. I especially experience this with the people with dementia, because the people that didn't, they were still finicky, and maybe they didn't want to do something right then and there. They didn't want to deal with you. And that was fine. You had those people. But with the dementia, it just complicates it. Like I said, they go on their own, at their own pace. That's something that you have to learn very quickly, is that you're on their time, not your time. And you have to respect that. And it can be a little hard, but patience is a virtue. If you don't get anything else from this long video, it's that patience is a virtue. And deep breaths, and it's going to be okay. Because think about it this way, you wouldn't want someone coming in to your room, bursting into your room, and saying you need to go to the bathroom when you don't even know what's going on. Why is this person here? Think about it. So you're a young person, okay, and you're sitting at your desk or your bed, wherever you are right now. Picture this. So you're sitting here watching this video, and someone bangs the door open, comes storming in, and you may know them, you may not. Probably not. Probably like, who is this person? And they come and talk to you, and maybe they're talking in a really, really loud voice. And they say, it's time to go to the bathroom. And you're like, what? Like, I don't have to go to the bathroom. Like, I'm not going with you. For starters, why would I need you to take me to the bathroom? I'm a young adult. Like, screw you. And then they just keep bothering you. And then you're finally like, okay. And you're taking your time, getting up, like, you're not really sure. And they're, like, trying to shove you along, and you're like, all right. And maybe you do have to go to the bathroom, and that's great. But maybe you don't. Say you don't. You don't have to go to the bathroom. And so you're sitting on the toilet, and you're like, all right. And they're, like, tapping their foot. They're looking at their watch, and they're like, are you done yet? Are you done? Are you ready to get up? And you're like, just give me a minute, man. That's kind of the experience that these people have. And it's, it's hard as an aide because you get sucked into this. Like, I found myself even doing that. And I would get really mad at myself when I did this. So I'd get frustrated and overwhelmed, and I would start thinking more about the schedule, more about the bathrooms and the toiletings that I had to record, and the things that I had to do and put into this tablet, into the system, more than the person that was standing there right in front of me and their needs in that moment, and how they were feeling and what their day had been like, and what's going on in their head. And so that's something that I really think is an issue in the assisted livings and the care facilities. And how they operate. I would say, a lot of times during my work, I would kind of talk to my friend just to kind of like vent about my job. And definitely towards the end, I felt like kind of like a robot. Because I was just required to do so much. And that was because another major problem with assisted livings or, care facilities is they are ridiculously understaffed. So, for instance, I will just say my personal experience towards the end of my time at this facility. So towards the end of the time that I worked there, I was doing third shift, solely only third shift, just because I had things going on during the day with my internship, and it just worked out that way. And so I worked thirds, and I worked in it was called the Terrace. We called it the Terrace, but it was the locked memory care unit in the facility. And I was the only aide. And the Terrace was 2 full hallways. And it was just me. with a bunch of, I would say between 15 and 20 at that time, older adults with some sort of dementia on differing stages. So if they were in the lot, and if they were in the terrace, that meant that the dementia had been progressed to a later stage. So they were in the middle of it or the later stages. So they needed a lot of help, and it was just little old me. And thankfully I had, a med tech and other aides to help me out if I needed to, with a with a resident that was like, you needed 2 people to assist them. However, most of the time it was just me. And so there was a lot of nights that I did not stop for 8 hours. And because there was just so much to do, and there was one of me. And mostly things that got me off track or caused me to go for a really long time was that the residents needed extra attention. And that extra attention, I didn't have time to give it to them. I did it anyway, but it made it really difficult to get those things done on time. And so it kind of feels like you're, having to choose whether you're going to make sure that you get those toiletings and those checks on time, or do you want to make sure you're putting the person first and considering their thoughts and their feelings and their behaviors, and making sure you're providing that person-centered care that's emphasized but isn't really truly done. Not truly done or not encouraged, really. So, and there was also just a lot of things that ethically made me want to leave. And it was progressively throughout, my time as an aide there, but really towards the end was when I was getting angry and frustrated. For instance, there were individuals that came into our facility that shouldn't have been there. So I can talk about the differences between assisted livings and different care facilities in a different video, but for the sake of time, these individuals, they needed full care from a nursing home or someplace that they could, that they were qualified to give the care that they truly needed, and also had the staff and the support to do that, because we were severely understaffed. Throughout the entire time that I was there, we were not fully staffed. We always had a problem with staffing. It was awful, and I know that's a universal thing, and I'm not really sure what we need to do to fix that, but I really want to make it a goal of mine to figure it out, because I know how much it sucks when you're one person taking care of so many people. You shouldn't have to be responsible for 15 to 20 people on your own that have dementia. That's just not how you're going to provide optimal care. It's just a recipe for disaster. That's what it is. And a lot of nights, that's exactly what it was. But going back to my point was, there was just a lot of individuals that we allowed to come in, or management allowed to come in, that shouldn't have been there. They should have been in a different facility. And I understand another problem is that there's not enough room in different facilities. That's another problem that I could also address. And also an issue is that a lot of places have a bed quota, so they have to bring in a certain amount of people. They're required to. And so they feel this pressure to get people in. But I don't know. It comes down to, are you just going to let people in for the sake of it? Or are you going to let people in order for everyone involved to succeed? Are you going to let the people in where your staff are going to be suffering because they can't properly care for them, and it's impacting the amount of care that they can provide to other residents? And then in turn, that resident who needs extra care isn't getting it, and so then they're suffering, and then their family comes in, sees that they're suffering, and then they get angry, and then what? And all while this resident and their family are paying a ridiculous amount of money for what? For poor care? And so everyone loses? Or are you going to consider the individuals and really consider how the staff that you have, and is it a good fit? And obviously, I'm not in management. I know there's a lot more to it, but I just think there's a lot of ethical issues with that. I really do. I get that it's easier said than done to fix these major issues, but it's something that we need to talk about because we're setting up everyone involved for failure. And this is why. So, a couple of personal stories. There was an individual that came in to our facility, and he had dementia, and he was he couldn't walk on his own, really. He was kind of getting less and less stable with his legs, and so his family came in, and this man, he was had a Hispanic heritage. Can't really remember where exactly, but he had Hispanic heritage, and then he was also he also had Italian in him, or he knew how to speak Italian, one of the two. And then he also obviously spoke English. But something that happens with dementia is you lose the ability to kind of talk when you progress, particularly Alzheimer's, but different types of dementia. But so some of the first language that you lose is the last ones that you learned. So for me, I'm a native English speaker, and then I also know some Spanish. I'm not fluent, but say that I was. When I get older, if I had some sort of dementia, the first thing I would forget in terms of language is the Spanish that I knew. So for this man, English was his last language that he learned. So I found when he was declining, and he declined rather quickly. That's why his family decided to put him in the nursing or in our facility, because they were running out of options and he was declining fast. So he was declining, and I found that he was speaking less and less English and going back to Spanish and maybe a little Italian. I don't really know. It was just kind of hard. It was gibberish a little bit, and something with the gibberish is if it's English, you can kind of pick up on what they're trying to say. But this was gibberish in Spanish / Italian / I don't really know. Now you're probably saying, okay, well, there was probably someone that could speak Spanish there, right? Nope. No one. No one knew how to speak Spanish there fluently. Their idea of helping us through this management, their intervention was giving us flashcards and different things like that. No, just literally like flashcards that had some basic things on it, like bathroom, food, different questions, basic things. But he wasn't saying basic things. He was saying things full on in fluent Spanish that nobody understood what he was saying. And so he would get more and more scared, upset, frustrated because nobody knew what he was trying to say. That's a problem. Luckily, I did know some Spanish, but it wasn't anything crazy. And so I would say some comforting things to him and hope that he could understand what I was saying, and but it was just sad because I could never understand what he was saying. And that's frustrating because it's like, how are you supposed to help someone? It's hard with a language barrier when they get into the later stages of a dementia diagnosis, but especially if there's language barriers, extra language barriers, because they're speaking an entire different language than the majority of the staff knows. I don't know. Like I said, it's just setting us up for failure. Everyone. Setting them up for failure. And then one other story I want to address that I just feel, in terms of ethics and just everything wrong with care, and the reason why we need to, going back to the staffing issues, the reason why we need to have more staff, and we need to figure it out fast, because things happen that are bad, like what I'm about to tell you. So, in the terrace, or the memory care unit, legally, there only has to be one staff member in there at a time. So that was kind of an issue when I was a third shifter, and that included me going to do the laundry, get dishes for breakfast, and set the tables. If there was anyone who had an incontinence accident, and so they wet the bed or something like that, wet through their clothes, I had to bring it out to the washer and dryer that were outside of the locked care unit, or sometimes someone needed help on that other side of the doors, so then no one was in there. So that's an issue in itself, but legally, one person has to be there, okay? So this is a story that has to do with staffing, okay? So I decided to pick up a first shift this day. I don't know why, I just did. And so when I pulled up, there was a police car and there was an ambulance. And that's never a good sign, because that means usually that someone has died and they weren't on hospice, and so that's why the police get involved, or there was an accident or something like that. Either way, not a good thing. And it was on the side that I was working on by the terrace, even worse. So I get in, and there's a lot of commotion, and it turns out that one of our residents died. So the situation was, there was one individual working that night, and they were trying to do their rounds, where they do toiletings and check on people, and there was a lot of people who also they were awake and they needed assistance and this and that, and it was just a very busy night. And so someone that rang, they use they have little buttons on, like a pendant, that they can use to go to the bathroom. And this was a person who never really woke up in the night and didn't really ever need assistance. They were in a wheelchair, but they could, they didn't typically get up in the night. So, if they did, it was just to get a snack or something like that, but very low maintenance. So, I guess they had to use the bathroom, and so they called on their pendant. It was a real emergency and they needed help, so they called their pendant. Nobody came. Time passed, and so they decided to get up themselves and get into their wheelchair out of their bed. In the process of doing that, they fell and hit their head and cracked it open. And so they instinctively tried to get to the door, and so they crawled over to the door because they couldn't walk. And along with it was blood, and they got to the door but couldn't reach the door or the handle. And then they sat there. They proceeded to lay there because nobody came. Eventually, some time went by, and one of the other aides from another part of the facility had to come over to the terrace to see what was going on, because the pendant had been going on for like an hour at this point. They came to the door of that resident who had called and couldn't. They went to open the door and couldn't, because their body was blocking it. They had bled out because they had a blood clot in their brain, I guess, and they died. All because there was only one person working, and she was occupied with all the other residents' needs, and there wasn't anyone else around. But then, so cut to later that morning when we're seeing all this happen, and they removed their body, or the funeral home removed their body, and you could see the blood just streaked across the floor and all the way to the door. And yeah, but this is not even the worst part. So one of the workers at our facility decided, when the body was still in there in the room, because the cops were it was an investigation, but they decided to take a picture of the body. And I didn't know this at the time, and so cut to the end of our shift, and we were giving report to second shift, the other aide and I, and the other aide, we were talking to them about what had happened that morning with the resident who had died, and the other aide said, "I have a picture of the body, do you want to see it?" And the aides that were working second shift, they were young, probably teenagers, and they were like, "Yes, sure." And I was like, "I'm sorry, what did you say?" And the aide proceeded to show us the pictures of the dead body. And it gives me chills, like, just thinking about it, and it makes me want to throw up, honestly. I looked on the screen, and there was the resident who I had cared for, was someone's dad, was someone's significant other, was someone's grandparent, was a person, and there was a picture of them on someone's phone, bleeding out and dead on the ground. That's not okay. And I know that's a hard story to listen to, and it's shocking, and I don't know about you, but it makes me, to this day, that was a couple years ago now, and to this day makes me ill. The fact that someone who is in a position that they care, they are literally paid, and it is their job to care for others in their most vulnerable state, and just to disrespect them and take a picture of their body like that, it's just not okay. So I guess to summarize, I know that was kind of a heavy way to end this, but this is the reality. I mean, this is not what's happening at every care facility. Granted, this is just my experience, and I'm sure I know for a fact that there are a lot of great care facilities out there. However, even the greatest facility that has the greatest, facility just in general, services, all these different things that are glamorous. It's like brand spanking new. Everything, you could have the best facility, but if you don't have staff that are empathetic, well trained, they care. If they don't care, if it's just a job, I will tell you this, if you don't take anything else from this, if you're pursuing a job as an aide, as a CNA, anything like that, if you're just doing it for the money, don't. McDonald's, Aldi's, Meijer, those are all jobs that are easy and they will pay you well. These jobs as aides, CNAs, they don't pay very well. And you get treated, it's a lot. And so in order to do this job, you have to want to do it. You have to want to create a better environment and the best end of life for these individuals that you possibly can. That's why you should do it. You shouldn't do it just for a paycheck, because there's 20 gazillion places that you could work for a paycheck. This is to make people's lives better. That's what this job should be, and that's why you should want to do it. And just, if nothing else, I hope that sharing my experiences start a conversation and get you thinking about how we're treating our elders, when they're in their most vulnerable space. They come to an assisted living or a nursing home or any care facility because they need to, not because they want to. And so you need to be able to create an environment that is the best one that you can possibly provide. That's just what it comes down to. And I think there's a lot of work that we need to do, and that starts with conversations, that starts with investigating on how many staff are, working. Is this okay? Standing up for yourself. If you're an aide and you're taking care of 15 to 20 people by yourself, stand up for yourself. That's something that I wish I would have done, but I never did, because I thought that that's just what I had to do. You shouldn't have to do that. You should be treated better. You should be respected, and you need to have as much as the residents need to have a great environment, you as the aide, CNA, whatever your title is, you deserve to have a great working environment as well. And that includes people that have good intentions for working there, staff, management that's supportive to you and that is welcoming and willing to help you through this process, because it's hard, starting out. It's hard throughout entirely. But you deserve to have a great work environment, because when you have a great work environment, it turns into a great living environment for your residents, because you feel you want to be there, you're having a great time, you enjoy your job, and in turn, you're going to give care that is amazing. So that's all I have to say. 40 minutes later, I'm sorry. If you sat through this, I really appreciate it. Feel free to like and subscribe if you want. If not, that's okay. I have an Instagram. I will link it below. And I'd love to hear, if you work in an assisted living care facility, I would love to hear your thoughts on all of this and your experiences, because it's just really interesting, and I'd love to just hear about what I can do as a future professional on how to build those or fix those gaps in the care facilities. So thank you so much. Have a great day, night, evening, morning, whatever it is, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.